Most people think business is about having a massive office or a decade of experience. They're wrong. It's about solving problems others are too afraid to touch. At 19, Ethan didn't have capital or connections. He had a $32,000 used truck and a vision for a system. In 90 days, he turned that single vehicle into $159,000 in revenue. This isn't a get-rich-quick story. It's a mechanical breakdown of how you build a machine that turns total chaos into recurring cash flow. He didn't start by buying a brand new, shiny rig. That's how you go broke. He bought a $32,000 used truck. Why? Because he understood the math of breathing room. If you buy a new truck, you're a slave to the bank for years. By staying lean and buying used, he kept his overhead low. He wasn't playing the ego game. He was playing the survival game. He knew that in the first 90 days, your only goal is to stay alive. Ethan's background wasn't in some elite firm. It was in the mud of contract labor. He learned the one thing you can't teach in school: how the gears of the economy actually turn. He realized that while everyone else was chasing trends, the physical economy was struggling with one massive issue: reliability. He didn't pick trucking because he loved driving. He picked it because it's a non-negotiable utility. He saw a gap, and he decided he was going to be the one to fill it. He chose refrigerated freight. It's not cool and it's not sexy, but it is essential. Food, medicine, chemicals, they all need temperature control, and they don't stop moving even when the economy gets shaky. By picking a niche that was recession-resistant, he removed the biggest variable of a new business, the demand curve. He wasn't just driving, he was positioning himself in a lane where the work was guaranteed to keep coming. The first load is the hardest hurdle you'll ever face. Ethan didn't treat it like a simple delivery. He treated it like a high-stakes mission. He over-communicated at every step. He tracked the temperature. He updated the broker before they even asked. By the time that load arrived, he wasn't just a carrier. He was a solution. He proved his reliability on a small scale so he could get the big, recurring contracts later. How do you get a client when you're 19? You don't lead with price. You lead with predictability. Ethan started cold calling brokers, the middlemen who control the flow of goods. He didn't try to be the cheapest guy on the board. He told them, "I'll be on time, every time." That's it. In an industry defined by flakes and delays, being the guy who actually shows up is a competitive advantage that money can't buy. Trucking is brutal. In his first month, he faced 16 breakdowns. Coolant leaks, electrical failures, tires blowing at 3 a.m. Most people quit here. They call it bad luck. Ethan called it a process deficit. He stopped looking at breakdowns as emergencies and started seeing them as standard operating expenses. If you aren't prepared for the road to break your equipment, you aren't prepared to own a business. He didn't rely on random dealerships. He spent his downtime building a decentralized network, a contact list of mechanics in Phoenix, Seattle, and everywhere in between. When a truck went down, he wasn't scrambling. He was executing a recovery sequence. That network was his secret weapon. It wasn't luck that saved his business. It was having a phone book thicker and faster than his competition's. Here's the reality nobody tells you. In trucking, you deliver today, but you might not get paid for 60 days. If you don't have a cash buffer, you're dead. Ethan implemented the 20% rule. Every dollar that hit his account, 20% was gone immediately into a disaster fund. It wasn't for growth. It was to ensure that when an engine blew, he didn't panic. That buffer was his defensive moat. He used a $100 a month logistics software, a TMS. It handled the dispatch, the invoices, and the driver logs. It was the central brain of his operation. By automating the admin work, he freed himself up to think like an operator rather than a driver. He wasn't just working in the business, he was working on the business. This is how you scale from 1 truck to 5 without losing your mind.
The real turning point wasn't the second truck. It was when he stopped being the driver. If you're behind the wheel, you aren't building a business. You're just doing a job. He realized that to scale, he had to move into the operator's chair. He had to trust his systems and his drivers to execute the mission while he focused on the strategy. It's a hard shift to make, but it's the only way to go from self-employed to owner.
He didn't hire people looking for a quick buck. He hired professionals. He marketed his company not as a job, but as a stable, systematic operation. He showed drivers that he had the routes, the repair network, and the disciplined cash flow to guarantee their pay. In an industry famous for drama, stability is the most valuable commodity you can offer. He built a brand that signaled, "We don't do drama, we do deliveries." How did he get more trucks? He leveraged the relationship he built during his first purchase. He stayed in touch with the seller. When the market tightened and trucks became scarce, he was the first person the seller called. He put down a deposit, not out of ego, but out of necessity to secure the assets. This is the power of long-term thinking. He treated his suppliers like partners, not just vendors. To truly scale, he focused on deadheading, the practice of moving empty. Moving empty is where trucking businesses go to die. Ethan optimized his lanes so his trucks were almost always carrying freight. By pairing outbound loads with strategic return freight, he effectively doubled his revenue per mile. He wasn't just driving more, he was driving smarter. It's the difference between a high-revving engine and a high-efficiency machine. Once he proved he was the reliable guy, something shifted. He didn't have to hunt for work. The work came to him. Brokers started sending him load confirmations automatically every week. He had built a reputation that made him the only logical choice. When you provide certainty in an uncertain world, you don't have to negotiate price. You set the terms, because the broker can't afford the risk of going with anyone else. Business is essentially a series of repeatable systems. Ethan didn't have a secret strategy. He had a repeatable process. Maintenance schedules, cash flow buffers, broker communication, driver vetting. It's all boring stuff, but when you do it consistently, it creates a massive moat. Most businesses fail because they get bored with the discipline. Ethan stayed disciplined when it was easy, and especially when it was hard. Every business faces shocks. The market shifts, the fuel prices spike, the regulation changes. Ethan's system was designed to absorb those shocks. Because he wasn't over-leveraged, and because he had that 20% buffer, he could pivot when the market turned. He didn't have to liquidate. He didn't have to panic. He just adjusted the system and kept moving forward. That's what it means to be resilient. The takeaway here isn't that trucking is the perfect business. It's that any business can be a perfect business if you manage it like an architect. You have to build the foundation, the load-bearing walls, and the automated systems. You have to be willing to look at the mess, the chaos, and the failures, and instead of complaining, you draft a better set of blueprints. That's what Ethan did. He architected a business that could survive itself. Success isn't about hitting one massive home run. It's about hitting singles, every single day, without breaking the machine. It's about showing up, solving the problems nobody else wants to touch, and doing it with a little more structure than the next guy. It's a quiet way to build something massive. If you're looking for a blueprint, start here. Find a boring, necessary industry and apply an obsessive level of structure to it.
So, if you're sitting there wondering if you have what it takes, stop looking for inspiration and start looking for a system. Ethan's story proves that you don't need magic. You need discipline, you need to manage your cash, and you need to build relationships that last. Turn the chaos of life into a disciplined, high-velocity engine. That's how you build an empire. Thanks for watching, and stay focused.